Welcome to another deep dive edition of the Chicks on the Right podcast. Very, very excited today to have with us our very special guest, Matt Dasinger of DAS Executive Protection Services. Matt, if for those of you who may recognize him, was actually our security team lead for our first Camp Tono event in Tampa this past September. And he did an amazing job. His whole team was amazing, and we all fell in love with him and like his whole super studly security squad.
The quadruple S. Yes.
Right. And so the reason that we brought Matt on to talk with us today is because after our event, we had a long chat with Matt about, I don't want to call it a side hustle because that's not the right word for it, but in addition to what you do with DAS Executive Protection, you are also really, really involved in the drug crisis and helping people who are addicts and rescuing people who are addicts using Narcan, which I think is a rescue drug that a lot of people have heard of but don't know a lot about. And it was a huge eye-opening education for us, and we thought it would benefit our audience to hear the same kind of information about Narcan and why it might be something that they want to have in their own homes.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Right. And also your backstory. I think your backstory was like, we were like, wow, like how you got into it and then why you do it and why people should be concerned about this because, parents especially, I just don't think people understand the severity of this issue. In their neighborhoods, they think, oh, this is a border problem. Because I live in Texas and I know it's a border problem. But then I don't think people realize that this is the border is everywhere. This problem is everywhere. And so it's just something that we felt necessary to talk about with our folks. And so we're really happy to have you on. And hopefully you can tell your story and tell everybody why this is so important.
Go.
Thank you guys. I can't help but smile whenever I talk to you guys. It's just pleasure. So as you guys know, I was a war veteran at 19 years old. So I was addicted to painkillers at a young age. I had some injuries in the military, and that's kind of how that whole thing started. So that put me in the recovery life, basically recovery for vets that are all clean. Which is a small number. So only 1 out of 25 war vets are clean, meaning any mood or mind altering substances. So a lot of vets and even a lot of people started with prescription pills or some other drug and somehow ended up with fentanyl because it's it's cheaper, it's on the streets. I mean, literally. So just statistically, I think is what I talked to you guys about. So when I got into this program, we were handing out 100 boxes a month. So that was, and it was a huge
of Narcan, you mean?
Yeah, and each
of
box
Narcan.
has 2. So Narcan's a nasal. I'm sorry because I have a million things going on. I should have had the box of Narcan with me here, but it comes in a box. I think I gave you guys that. It has 2 doses in it, and so basically. The overdoses in our county before COVID were an average of 1 person. These are overdose deaths. So not overdose related deaths. So like if you get a disease or you have a heart attack or something in the hospital, that doesn't count. It's just strictly overdose on-site dead. That was 1 a day average in Pasco County, Florida. And do you guys want to guess what it is now?
I'm
Gosh,
afraid.
so like 900 probably.
So it's now 4 deaths a day. So it's gone up 3 times.
Wow.
So 4 people a day die here just in this county of overdoses.
And you're in Florida. Just let everybody know you're in Florida, right?
And honestly,
okay, so
it's not just this county; it's the area, period, and it's actually Florida. Miami's probably way higher. The border towns are really high, and
they're
the thing
probably
is, I
high.
told you guys a story. Fentanyl can cross-contaminate; it's that strong. So say somebody has fentanyl in one bag and then weed in another, but it's all in one bag, it can cross-contaminate. So there was a 15-year-old girl that died. She hit a joint and literally died immediately.
Oh my God.
It's terrifying.
The fentanyl problem, like it's not even about fear mongering now. It's strictly about the numbers. It's just skyrocketing and nobody. So to backtrack a little bit, I was handing out 100 boxes a month. Do you guys know how many I'm handing out now?
No.
And you're like an official distributor of it.
Yes. So my company, because you have to have a company to do it within the means of the law. That's another hurdle that we've been trying to overcome, is that there's so many hurdles because it is kind of it's a prescription. You got to have a prescription. You have to have a doctor to prescribe it to you to even distribute it. You have to,
wow.
So it's not like It's not like Mock and I can go out and just give it out to people. Like if we have it, we can give it to our families, but it's not like we can go out and be like, hey, everybody, at our meet and greet, we can like just pass it out. Right. You have to have like some sort of a license like you do to do that, right?
Well, no. So you just have to have a license to distribute it. So like in the masses. So my organization brings in, like I told you guys, now I'm at 600 boxes a month. Literally, my wife's going to keep backing them up in my spare room. But
my God.
So it literally went to 600 a month. There was actually a news article I think I showed you guys. I made the local news here because we just started this like literally to do the right thing, because during the riots and stuff like that here during COVID, the ODs were going way up and the recovery community was getting hit hard because one, there was no meetings. We were fortunately in Florida, we were only under a lockdown for a small period of time. But, addicts basically didn't have any meetings to go to. The homeless number went up. It was just, it was bad times here. So, and it still is, as far as overdoses are concerned. So, when I talked to you guys about it, it was like, I couldn't believe that you guys didn't even know. And this is kind of, I should have known, because actually that is a wide thing, because people don't know. When I say, there was a sheriff that was like, I can't even get this. And I had so many boxes sitting in and that's not right. The sheriff's office should be able to get it before I get it.
That is crazy.
So I started distributing to them, and then, it was, so it's different states have different laws about it. Some people would say that we don't believe in Narcan because it's enabling addicts. Well, for me, I don't believe. Now, there's like stories you hear. I know a bunch of people in the recovery community, even veterans, that have been brought back to life from Narcan 4 times. They still use, but they got into recovery later on. So it gave them a chance to actually live to even see recovery. Because these days, a life is a life. I don't think that Narcan or any kind of black or red tape should hold us up from being able to distribute that out. And honestly, we can't keep up with it. It's a full-time job. I'm going to have to open up a full organization to be able to distribute the amounts that we're getting in right now and trying to distribute. It's just
so where do you do that, Matt? Like, where do you go? Do you just physically get in your car and start driving around and looking for people to distribute it to? How do you do it? Like, what are the logistics of that?
So we did do that. We've done everything from provide other organizations, other security companies. I've provided 4 or 5 different security companies. Even though they're competition, I went to them and said, hey, I'll distribute to you that way. Because a lot of security is on the front lines of this, like rock shows, events, this, that.
Right.
So a lot of security see it, and used to in security, we would have to just call the paramedics. And by that time, the person had flatlined or even brain dead by that point. So that's kind of how I started looking into trying to get it, through my organization. And I had to jump through hoops. I had to go to the main lady in the state, tell her, listen, I'm having to get it for somebody else. That girl is like not on top of it because I have to distribute fast, So we did, to answer your question, Daisy, we have thrown them out of the car. We've done every possible thing you can think of. Like, we've rolled into woods, wooded area, homeless areas. We've rolled into everywhere and handed them out.
I bet. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Tell more about your story. Because I know you said that you got addicted to pain pills. How bad did it get? What was your turnaround moment? And then, I mean, it makes perfect sense that as a security person, you're at events where you're seeing people literally check out because they've gotten some bad weed or they've gotten a bad pain pill or whatever. But I would love to know more about like your transformation, because I always think those stories are inspiring to people.
Me too.
And especially a lot of the folks that attended our event, you know, they feel like they know you, and it'll be even more meaningful to those folks too.
So, like I said, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. I did a lot of things in there, as you guys could probably imagine. You know, I had some injuries there. When I was prescribed painkillers back in 2006, I didn't even know what oxycodone or Oxycontin was at that time. I had just gotten out of the military. The doctor said, hey, take this. I was like, okay, cool. At that time, I was a union iron worker. So I got out of the military from the Helmets to Hard Hats program. So literally fast tracked from military to the union. And I was taking that. So I was prescribed 330 milligram oxycodone a month for 8 years. So that's,
oh my gosh.
So when the DEA and the feds cracked down on pain pills, they had to reduce the amount of pills that I was taking, where my body was used to this many pills. So a lot of people say I'm lucky to be alive just from being that, because I was actually prescribed that, Xanax, all these other things that you get for PTSD and all these other things. So it all caught up when the feds cracked down and said, okay, now you can only get this much per month. Well, automatically that made me, dope sick. Mm-hmm. So I lost my job. At that time, it was 2008. There was a crash. If you guys remember, there was a crash.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Back then. And, everybody cut down. So then it was literally, it had just all caught up at that point. It was apparent that I needed help at that point. I couldn't do it. I couldn't kick it on my own. I couldn't do it like just on my, I tried doing that. I tried to cold shoulder it. I tried to do like the marijuana replacement program. I tried to do just drinking and stuff like that. And it didn't work, So I went to a program for veterans and I got clean. July of this year will be 10 years clean. I'm kind of like excited about that because that's a decade, it's kind of.
Right. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And that was, at that point when I was probably I think I was almost 2 years clean is when I got back into security. I literally, I had met someone when I was back in the day that did this, and they were like, listen, you would be great at this job, but you need to get clean first, and then you can come do this. So, because a lot rides on it. I mean, as you guys see, literally people's lives are in my hands all the time. So,
right.
You have to pretty much be clear-minded all the time to do this. So it's not, but it kind of, in the recovery community, even in the veteran world, it was inspiring to others for me to do what I was doing. So I kept doing it. And then it came to the point where it was like, okay, now it's time to give back and do things that are, all the stuff, all the years that I had ripping and roaring and partying, that it was time to give back, So that's kind of how I got into the Narcan program.
Yeah. And we've seen you do your job. You run a tight ship. So
it's true.
So you definitely have to be sober. You definitely have to be sober doing your job. I don't know if I'd want to work for you, Matt. It's a little bit crazy up in there.
Yeah, we have to keep you.
Now I have a question. I have a question about fentanyl, and I don't know if you can answer this or not. I'm going to guess that you can, because you've been around it long enough and you've understood it long enough that maybe you can help this make sense. When you hear the news talking about fentanyl and the crisis, and like how, there was a bust on the border and there was enough fentanyl to kill 400 million people. And like, it's a tiny speck that can kill people. So how does that work with street drugs? Like, how is it that all of these dealers, all the people that are literally trying to kill others, because I don't know what other way there is to look at it, how do they handle fentanyl themselves without being harmed by it?
Without
I don't
dying.
understand that at all.
Right.
So it's weird. Some of them might not. You wouldn't know who was dealing and who wasn't if they flatline and die, right? So, most people with fentanyl, what they try to do is they try to make Molly or ecstasy, or they try to mix their own pills. Well, only really a chemist could know how strong each dose of fentanyl is. Now, the doses of fentanyl have gotten stronger and stronger over time. So literally less than a pinky. Used to be like a pinky amount could kill you. Now it's literally you could touch it and it could kill you. Or you could.
So how are they doing that? How are they even mixing stuff together? How are they receiving it and not dying? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even understand how this works.
I guess some are, or some, I guess we could just assume that some are dying doing that.
Yeah, I mean, so say somebody dies from fentanyl overdose, right? You won't know that till the coroner, says, hey, he died from fentanyl. Well, you wouldn't know if that guy was actually dealing it or using it, They can't really tell how it got in the body, or if they could, they really don't. I mean, you're talking, when we're talking numbers about just here, you're talking, if you just take this county or this area and then you multiply that by, and we can assume that other areas are probably worse, more congested areas are probably worse. That's, the coroner is just getting slammed with ODs, As far as the border goes, I don't want to get too political with you guys, but honestly, an open border, it's going to let more drugs in, right? It doesn't take a genius to see that, right? So
yeah,
I don't know if actually stopping the border was the issue, or I don't know, but I know that a bunch, especially during COVID, has flowed in.
Yeah, the border probably has a little bit, just maybe a wee bit to do with it. I would imagine the fact that they've just opened wide up, just a tiny bit. Yeah. So from a parental perspective, okay, it freaks me out as a mom because, and I live in Texas, obviously, so that it makes it an issue because we're so close to the border. But, okay, so, if I have some of this stuff on hand, if I have Narcan on hand, and I suspect that, my kid has taken something, and I'm like, oh my God, she's OD'd on something, and I'm going to administer Narcan. Like, if for some reason I administer it, because this is a question that we asked you, and I think it's very important for people to know this. Like, if they can get their hands on Narcan, and we can tell them how to do that in a second. But if for some reason I administer Narcan and it's nasal, right? It's like doing Afrin, right? It's like giving somebody Afrin. Like, it's definitely not like Afrin, but it kind of, the way that you administer it is like Afrin, right? But if it's nasal, so you give it to your loved one, and you're like, oh crap, well they didn't ingest, fentanyl. Narcan will not hurt them in any way, right? If you give it to them erroneously, like if you accidentally give them Narcan, it's not going to hurt them in any way. It can only help them.
Like they're just napping and all of a sudden you shock them awake with like a spray of Narcan.
I would do that.
And they're like, I'm just napping. What are you doing?
I thought you were overdosed. I thought you had overdosed on fentanyl. But Mom, I was just taking a nap. I was just tired.
Yeah, so that's
right.
Actually that's a question we get constantly. It absolutely will not hurt anyone. And honestly,
okay, good.
Honestly, you need to apply, so if you did think someone was overdosing, you would hit them with the Narcan, the nasal spray, one time.
Mm-hmm.
You would wait anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds. And then if you don't see a response, you do it again. And you keep doing it. Obviously, you call 911 first, and then you start administering it. But it absolutely can't. Say you're ODing on meth, and somebody gives you Narcan, it's absolutely not going to hurt you or do anything. So a lot of people think that.
So what is it doing? What is it actually doing?
So it's an opiate blocker. So when you spray it, it automatically blocks opiates from doing what it's doing in the brain, which is blocking the sensors. And I'm not a doctor, but that's kind of how I've been explained to about it. It's kind of like you hear of other blockers, like, the strips that people take coming down off of opiates. It's another drug, but This literally, and somebody that's ODing on fentanyl, if you hit them with the Narcan, they're going to wake up immediately pissed off because now they're withdrawing from the drug because now the drugs aren't getting them high anymore. So you see, like I know you pretty much in the, you watch the news and stuff, and you see people walking through like people with zombies, like they're literally standing there. They look like they're going to fall over. Well, that's fentanyl.
Yeah.
So that's what it looks like. Like you can't really mistake somebody. Like they'll get white, they'll get cold, they'll get, it's literally like instant death with fentanyl. So, there's people out there that say, oh, I'm just going to use a little bit. I'm just going to do this. That's not the case at all. You cannot be a chemist and figure out how much you need to use to not OD.
Right. Right.
And the danger is that people think they're taking something that doesn't have any fentanyl in it, and then it does.
It does.
And so that was one of the things that you said at our meet and greet that like really stood out. Like, you think that your kid is not involved in any kind of drug use or anything like that. But even if they accept a pill from a friend thinking it's, Tylenol or whatever, they don't know. If they don't know where that pill has come from, you don't know as a parent when you might be in a position where you need Narcan. And that's why I feel infinitely better just knowing that it's on hand. How can other parents also obtain it just so that they have a supply? They know that they're protected. They know their family's in good shape.
So there's different ways to acquire it. That's why we wanted to get the information out there, because there's a lot of false information about Narcan. There's a lot of bad things saying it enables addicts, The best way to do it is to look and see if it's outlawed in your state. So usually that would be a higher up question than me to know all the states that it's legal and it's not. I mean, I don't think it's illegal anywhere, but then again, as far as distribution goes, it could be. So that's why I would say, hey, just call me. If you're in the state of Florida, you can definitely call me. Yeah, you can call our organization. If you're another organization, we can get you set up to distribute. As far as other states, like Texas, I believe you're allowed to do the same thing that we're doing. Don't quote me on that, but I think you can. But parents need to know, and then also the conversation with the kids. Like, hey, if you're going to take ecstasy, if you're going to take Molly, whatever it's called, know that the risks are this. At least take this Narcan with you. So then it's like in your purse or whatever, because honestly, it's not like it used to be where a kid would take something and then come home and then OD. It's like literally you take it and you OD. So that's like, that's why I feel like, if everybody had it on them, at least your friend or whoever's with you, or if somebody comes up on you, they see the Narcan and they can use it and they know how to use it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's information that people need to know. We didn't know it. It was really enlightening talking to you at our meet and greet. And so that's why we wanted to have you on today to kind of spread the message around to our audience as well. We so appreciate it, Matt.
We really
it's so good
do,
to see
Matt.
your face.
And we hope to see you in April.